Right, for more on that conversation, we are now joined by dear Member of Parliament, Werner Horn. And you can be part of the conversation. Also, send us your views and thoughts tonight on 072-110-5584. Mr. Horn, good evening and thank you very much for your time tonight.
Good evening, Thabo.
Talk to me about why the decision to go to the UN Human Rights Council when this matter is still in our courts and certainly still going to be ventilated, I think, in September or so.
Yes, well, as you say, the Gauteng High Court more recently in the AfriForum matter determined that this is political speech, part of the freedom of speech we enjoy in this country, and in that sense, it's a precedent that, of course, will not assist a new complaint. It is, of course, so that they've now appealed to the Supreme Court of Appeal, but until hopefully they win that appeal, of course, internal remedies is no longer available. And therefore, we've made the choice now to approach the UN Human Rights Council, because there's, of course, also the possibility that the Supreme Court of Appeal might also determine that type of speech to be not hate speech.
Yeah. How does the DA view this argument that this is a historical song that is chanted by everyone who I suppose is remembering the triumph over those hard times?
Yeah, well, that's basically an argument the Gauteng High Court sustained. Our sense is that in a country where, of course, deep divisions, racial oppression has been very much part and parcel of our past, we cannot have a constitution that dreams about healing the divisions of the past if it is allowed for this type of hateful song to be sung. We're also very much of the view that in the current context in which it is being used, it's much more than just in remembering the struggles of the past or to mobilize politically. It happens within the context of an escalation in farm attacks and farm murders specifically, but it also happens within the context with Mr. Malema previously having said that he's not calling for the slaughter of white people yet, so that maybe he must answer the question whether last Saturday was now the yet moment in our lives. And of course, what has happened on Saturday as well is that there was, of course, also the addition of him adding shoot to kill, which, of course, we all know in the South African context is not, strictly speaking, part of the struggle, but rather of the more recent expressions of a police minister.
Yeah. And did you find after the chanting there's evidence that follows that links that chanting of that song with, as you put it, with relationship with the farm attacks and farm murders? Because this is what the judge, remember, said in the Equality Court, says they couldn't find that there could be that direct link.
Yes, well, the court found that the anecdotal or the layman evidence presented by AfriForum at the time did not really reach the necessary threshold. But Thabo, what cannot be denied is that the farming community in South Africa is a very vulnerable community. The incidence of farm attacks and farm murders is very high in comparison to other trades and other professions. And in that sense, we're of the view that it is unacceptable for a political leader to incite this type of violence, specifically also in a time where many of his followers, of course, were not part of the struggle and might not make that historical connection of and the argument that it is a song in remembrance of the struggle. So in our view, it's very much aimed at firstly the farming community, but secondly then against white people in general. I mean, one of the possible translations of the song is, of course, a call to kill white farmers specifically.
And why are you bringing the ANC government into this?
Well, the ANC government, in our view, has over the years failed both to address the correlation between the singing of the song and the escalation in farm murders, but the ANC government has also failed to address the security situation of specifically the farming community over the years. And in that sense, we all know what the situation is around specifically the murder rate in South Africa. We're of the view that the time has now come for this government to also be put in the spotlight by international bodies like the UN Human Rights Council.
Yeah. So I'm not clear on that. Just expand a little bit. What would you have expected the ANC government to have done? I mean, we have courts in this country that are dealing with the matter. We've got the necessary institutions where you can take these issues and raise them, and certainly they get attention. So what would you have wanted the government itself specifically to do?
Well, the government at any given time, of course, has a primary responsibility to keep its citizens safe. So maybe I must answer it this way. If one looks at the way the Human Rights Council could approach the matter by, for example, asking its special rapporteurs on minorities and contemporary forms of racism and racial discrimination to do a country visit, to investigate, and then ultimately to issue advocacy and advisory notices that could be aimed at both legislative reform and maybe governmental programs. So that's the type of activities the UN Human Rights Council will first embark upon before settling on resolutions to condemn. Yeah. And one would have thought that in the specific circumstance and with the clear evidence about the way in which farm attacks and farm murders is disproportionately present in respect of farming communities, that would have been the type of activities our government could have already embarked.
Yeah. The government can argue, for example, that the minister has come up with the rural safety strategy, showing that they are taking seriously this question of rural safety and farms and everyone is incorporated in that strategy to work together.
Yeah, well, the rural safety strategy of the minister is very much still a paper exercise. The organized farming community and specifically the security systems it has, through own funding, of course, put in place in most of our rural areas is rather to be thanked for the slight improvement in the safety situation of farmers. And in that sense, unfortunately, when one looks at the government of the day, farmers are still very much on their own.
So you are viewing that particular strategy as an inappropriate vehicle to deal with the crime issue that is affecting farming communities?
Yeah, well, strategy must inform both budget and systems. And in respect of the rural safety, we have a strategy, but budget is not aligned to that strategy. And we've always argued that properly staffed, properly trained, and properly funded rural safety units must be the end result of the strategy. Unfortunately, that has never happened.
Yeah. So how do you see how the UN Human Rights Council would then tell another government to say, here's how you must budget your crime prevention strategies?
Well, as I said, in respect of the UN Human Rights Council, firstly, it's of course the world in organized form which spotlights specific issues. That will not happen immediately, but after possible country visits, advocacy notes, advisory notes, of course, a lot of political pressure could be put on a government to deal with specific issues if the special rapporteurs included in their annual reports.
Werner, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on. That's DA Member of Parliament Werner Horn there, and their strategy now that they are taking as the Democratic Alliance following the chanting of that song. at the 10th anniversary celebration of the economic freedom fighters. Right.